All right, for more on this, I'd like to speak to a medical doctor who volunteered in Gaza twice, and he traveled to Egypt to participate in the global march to Gaza. For security reasons, he has requested not to be identified. Thank you so much for being with us on the program. And I understand why you don't want to be identified, given these sweeping measures that Egypt is taking. If you can, give us some insight into how they're detaining people and the process that follows.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think it is really important to share that the news items should not be focused on the deportations and the detainment and the treatment of activists and volunteers who are attending or attempting to attend the global march to Gaza, to the Rafah border, to demand humanitarian aid and to enter and to demand an end to the genocide and the starvation and famine, because I think it becomes a bit of a distraction to focus on the volunteers and the activists who are standing in full solidarity with the Palestinian people to demand an end to the siege and the blockade that is just indescribably unbearable to witness ongoing mass slaughtering of people when people are simply trying to feed their children, to feed their families, to get aid. And the ways in which aid is being distributed right now by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is absolutely not in keeping with humanitarian principles and is being delivered in a way that is completely undignified and is causing massacres with Israeli and American gunshot fire on these civilian populations that are seeking aid. But with what has been happening in Cairo, in Egypt, where I'm calling in from, with the detainment and the deportations of activists from many different countries, it is a very small proportion of the thousands that are in Cairo, in Egypt right now, ready to mobilize and organize to leave Cairo in the next day for Al Arish, and then from there we march 5 foot to the Rafah border crossing.
Indeed. I mean, there are participants from more than 40 different countries that have traveled far and wide to take part in this convoy. We're, of course, hearing from the Israeli government warning Egypt to prevent people from reaching the Rafah border crossing, saying it'll take matters into its own hands if they fail to do so. Are there worries that Israel may open fire on the convoy?
Of course, we see how Israel treats humanitarian aid workers. We've seen how Israel targets and kills healthcare workers, food delivery workers, ambulance workers, of all different stripes and colors, including those of an international or foreign kind of citizen background, including a citizen from my own country, and to see these repeated attacks on humanitarian aid workers, we see that this is an Israeli policy of targeted attacks on this humanitarian sector, on the healthcare sector. Of course, there is this risk for the global march to Gaza, and it's not just international volunteers and activists coming to Cairo to do this. There are land convoys, the Samud and Resilience land convoys from Tunisia that will join as well in the coming days. And we really hope for their safe passage through Libya currently and then through Egypt, through the Sinai. Of course, the negotiations with the Egyptian government and with the military presence in the Sinai will be an ongoing obstacle that we will continue to work on.
Right.
But for many of us from around the world, we have been liaising through our elected officials, through our parliamentarians, as well as direct meetings with Egyptian consulate, embassies, ambassadors, to urge for a safe passage for these volunteers and activists that simply want to see the aid that are in the thousands of trucks at the border crossing just simply be let in.
Right.
This is the main demand, and of course an end to the bombardments.
Of course.
That are.
You mentioned the systematic Israeli attacks that have taken place across Gaza, targeting medical workers, humanitarian workers. You've seen the devastation firsthand in Gaza. You've spoken to the people there. How much hope do actions and protests like this March on Gaza give them?
I think we have to hold on to hope, and we have to look towards the people of conscience that continue to organize and mobilize to do the things that our government and our international community has utterly failed to do, which is prevent and to stop genocide. And to see activists and volunteers from so many different parts of the world do what they can within their power to break the siege, to end the famine, to demand an end to the genocide, that is our responsibility as people of conscience that are bearing witness to what is happening. And I think that hope is not a passive thing. It is something that requires work. It requires an ongoing and sustainable kind of contribution and risk that we must all be able to really truly put on the line if we honestly care about humanity. Because being in full solidarity with the Palestinian people as they face an ongoing genocide, ongoing famine and starvation, is to protect our own humanity and to not lose that, and to not I think fall into the perils of a deeply sick society and world that has allowed genocide to continue for 20 months straight.
Well, we're going to be following that march to Gaza very closely here on TRT World. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing that insights.